and welcome to this video. My name is Becca if you're new here. If not, hello again. But today, the video I wanted to make was about how we stay positive when life gets hard. Because we have had a lot of people ask us this over time. So I will say we're not. We are not very positive all the time. I would say maybe we're more positive than some people I know, but you have to keep in mind that what I put out on the internet is what I want you to see. And I do want you to see like what our life is really like, and I will be very upfront and tell you like, oh, this is a very hard time for us right now. But me just saying that, that's not taking you through the day of a hard day in my life. Like, I'm not showing you when I am crying or like super depressed about something. I'm just telling you, oh yeah, yesterday was a bit tough, and then I'm moving on and talking about how great today is or whatever. So that's my first answer. Really fast, just to kind of sum up what our last few months have looked like, just to show you that it has been pretty tough. We lost our job and our sole source of income. We had a newborn baby, our second one. We had to move countries with both babies. There was a lot of uncertainty. We had nothing to move back to. We have been homeless for months. We have been moving probably every about 2 weeks on average. To be so completely unsure about what your future is and what your life is going to look like in the matter of a year is incredibly stressful. It is overwhelming. It is frustrating. It is all of the negative emotions. Like, this has been an incredibly hard few months for us. And the whole time I'm making videos saying like, yeah, it's very hard, but I do know and I do hope that the future will be better. But this has made me think a lot over the last while. What are the ways that I try to stay more positive? Like, what is it about me that I do tend to be a more positive person? So I did come up with a list. So I figured I would have a coffee and sit down and chat with you guys about how I'm so perky all the time. I'm not a perky person. So first thing on my list that I have is accepting your circumstances. This is the number one thing that you have to do when you go through something hard. It is unavoidable and it sucks. Sometimes life is just piling up on you and it feels like it's not stopping, and there are just a lot of situations that are totally out of our control. And you just have to recognize that. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not doing anything wrong. It's not you. It is just the situation that life has handed you. How are you going to deal with it? Our little family motto that we have, which I don't know how good this is, but sometimes when we're going through some really crappy things, the motto that we will say to each other is, sometimes you just gotta swim through the shit. Next up is you have to feel your feelings and be understanding to yourself. When life gets really hard, overwhelming, and honestly the best word I could come up with is turmoil. When your soul is in turmoil and it feels like everything is wrong and horrible, you need to take a moment and give yourself the space to feel those feelings. It will not do you any good to try to push them aside, to try to ignore them, to try not to put a brave face. And depending on your circumstances, on what you're dealing with, it might feel like these feelings will last forever. Your situation is gonna last forever. That's where the flip side comes in. It is only for a certain amount of time. Things will get better eventually, but you do need to accept your circumstances and feel the feelings of what you're going through in this moment. I know for me personally, I tend to ask myself a lot of questions like, why is this happening to me? Is it my fault? Did I do something? Like, how could I have made this better? Or even like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so sad right now? Like, why can't I just pull myself together? But that is where this point becomes such a big point. You have to be understanding for yourself. Do not be judgmental to yourself. Life is hard and it is hard for everybody. Give yourself some space and some grace, whatever you want to call it, and process. Sometimes that'll take 2 minutes. Sometimes it'll take 2 days. Other times 2 years. It is all situational dependent. The next tip that I have is living in the moment, aka distracting yourself. When we did this move back here, we were incredibly lucky that we were moving back to a ton of family and friends, and honestly it was probably the best thing that could have happened, because we got here and it felt like we did not stop. We were constantly seeing people, catching up with old friends, going to the aquarium with some people that we knew. Like, we were just always doing things, and by being so busy with people it didn't allow us to wallow in self-pity. Like, we had to live in the moment and be a lot more present. And honestly, I can't recommend that enough. If you have the opportunity to live in the moment and just try to distract yourself from all of the problems, all of the pain that you're going through. Next tip that I have is trying to talk to people. This is such a good way of processing what you're going through. I think the theme with a lot of these points is processing, because that is how you are going to get through hard times. Ignoring things and just trying to bottle it up and hope that it goes away, it's not going to help your brain deal with the situation, and it just leads to a lot of pent up anxiety. It's just not the way to go. So if you can, call up a friend, go on a walk with a family member. And I know for me, depending on how big the problem is, leads to how many people I end up talking to. If I'm like really swimming through the shit with something and I'm trying to process it, sometimes I will call one person and it's not enough. I will call another person. I'll talk to my husband about it until I feel settled in my soul is how many people I will talk to. Because again, it is just such a good way of processing your problem. The next tip that I have is writing things out. This is just another way to process. When my mind feels like a total jumble of chaotic disarray, the therapeutic process of taking a pen and putting it to paper is for some reason the best thing in the world. Because I think it takes the burden from trying to sort everything out, trying to keep all of the pieces floating and juggling everything and trying to work out this whole puzzle inside of your brain. Writing it out on paper and being able to visually see it and take that burden out of your brain and putting it onto something else just really helps to clear your mind. It helps you to put a different perspective on everything, and it just all around makes the whole situation seem a lot better. Because for us, for example, when we had to make this move, when we were dealing with so many hard things all at once, and there were so many different directions we could go, so many different situations, being able to put on paper the different situations that were actually options for us. And then, like, sometimes in the process of writing them out, we're like, this is crazy. Why are we even discussing this? And so we cross it out. We know that that's no longer an option. It takes that off the table. It makes life feel better. Next is watching out for spirals. Essentially, learn what your coping mechanisms are. Don't come at me for my latte art. All right, let's go take a seat in here. When your life is going horribly, if you have really kind of negative spiraling habits, typically the last thing you want to do is allow yourself to do those things, because then you feel like your life is horrible and you are horrible, which is not true, but in those situations, it just compounds. And so the best thing that you can do is stop them before they happen. So if you know that your coping mechanism is to binge chocolate like there's no tomorrow, but you know that you feel very horrible after eating an entire chocolate bar, make the Herculean effort to try not to do that in the first place. Or another one is binging shows. Like, if you know when life gets really stressful, all you want to do is just sit there and just turn off the world and watch a whole day's worth of Grey's Anatomy. Allow yourself to do a little bit of it, but then make sure that you have some limit in place so then you don't feel like you are a slug of a human. And then on the flip side of that, do the things that you know will make you feel good. So if you know that going on walks every day is how you feel sane, it's how you feel clear-minded, then make that a priority. No matter what else is going on in life, do what you need to do to try to keep yourself in a better mental state. Like I said, if your life is spiraling out of control, don't let your soul spiral out of control too. And then the very last tip that I have is looking to the future. I don't actually know if this is a very good one, but it's one that I personally use a lot. So, being married to a musician and having lived in a few different countries, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with it. Typically, during those transitory periods, they are brutal. There's something about the human soul that does not like living in limbo. It is excruciating. It feels like it's going to be forever. It's just not a fun place to be. And so a kind of coping mechanism, I think, for me is to try to imagine the future. One, it distracts me from how miserable I am in the moment. And two, it gives me hope. And even if the life that I imagine doesn't happen at all, it makes me happy for that day or whatever. And sometimes that's all you need, is just to kind of escape your reality and to try to look forward to the future and have a little bit of hope. So I finished all of my tips on how to stay positive before I took 3 drinks of my coffee. Really, this is a topic that I am like deeply interested in because everybody reacts so differently to different situations. So like I might react to our situation completely differently than my friend would. Neither one is wrong. And I also have a big issue with kind of like the toxic positivity. I am not about that at all. I actually hate when people are just like, oh, everything will be fine, everything will work out. And see, I have a hard time with that because I do truly believe deep down that everything will work out one way or the other. It's a matter of time and then life will be good again. However, I also completely know and understand that when you go through hard times, that is not helpful. It doesn't help your situation at all to know that the future will be better. Like the moment is still very hard. And so that's where I'm at, where I'm like, you have to accept that your moment that you're living in is hard. You need to vent, you need to feel your feelings, you need to do all of these different things that I just said. And that at the end of the day, I think is how you get through the hard times while staying mostly positive. The other thing that I think about a lot when I was making this video is that there are some incredibly hard things that people go through. And I hate that whole game of like, oh, well, what I'm going through isn't as hard as what somebody else is going through. But it is a little bit true. Like, we went through a very tumultuous time of uncertainty and anger and whatever. But other people are dealing with terminal cancer and losing a child and just a lot of different very hard situations. So sometimes thinking about those also helps put things into perspective. So those are all of my tips on how to stay positive. Let me know what you personally do, or I love hearing people's like coping mechanisms. So share what yours are if you know what they are down below. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.